SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation. SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation.
Surf Excel නම් භාගයයි මාසයකට වඩා රිදි සෝදායි.
A legend departs. The larger-than-life musician Sunil Perera of the Gypsies leaves behind an inspiring and unforgettable legacy. Doing the best we can. During the emergency regulations debate today, the opposition accused the government of authoritarian moves.
It is nothing but an attempt to bring more and more repression, authoritarian governance, and not to look at the consumer's benefit.
As the Justice Minister hit back at the impractical demands. Preparing the groundwork. In the run-up to the next Geneva showdown, Sri Lanka's UN Permanent Representative outlines the country's reconciliation progress.
We are not at cross purposes with Geneva. We know that His Excellency the President has given directives to expedite the work of the domestic mechanisms of the commissions of inquiry.
Next in line, health workers kick off vaccinations of people between 20 and 30 in Colombo, Kalutara, Gampaha and Galle. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Monday, the 6th of September 2021.
දසනකාන්තී චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයුෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වලකයි.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Ekanaika. One of Sri Lanka's most iconic, revolutionary and beloved musicians, Sunil Perera of the Gypsies, passed away today. Loved by generations of Sri Lankans both here and abroad, his music was the soundtrack to countless celebrations for their infectious, catchy and humorous takes on many aspects of Sri Lankan life, sometimes bordering on controversial. A highly outspoken musician, Perera lived a life of fearless creativity and leaves behind a legacy of music that will be hard to replicate and, most importantly, never forgotten. Although he is gone, his music, his golden voice and the joy and meaning he brought to millions of Sri Lankans will continue to live on.
He was an epoch-defining trailblazer of the Sri Lankan music scene. He was bold enough to embrace the new and refuse to be imprisoned by archaic thought. He was Sunil Perera. The musician, loved by people from all tiers of society, took his last breath today at the age of 68. He was receiving treatment at a private hospital for pneumonia at the time of his passing. However, Sunil Perera had tested positive for COVID-19 last month and was only recently discharged upon recovering from the virus. Ivor Sylvester Sunil Perera's pioneering work paved the way for many musicians from the modern generation to stardom. His passion and love for music was always clear from an early stage, and it wasn't much of a surprise when little Sunil, aged 11, joined the Gypsies group formed by his father. He progressed through the music industry as the frontman and leader of the band. The band's early success was due to the series of 5 albums they released in the late 1970s titled Dance with the Gypsies, which contained one of the most iconic songs at the time, Kurumitto. The song later became their first song to be recorded on cassette. Some of the band's most iconic hits were None Mage Sudu None, Lunu Dehi, Oye Ojaye, Piti Kota None, and Signore. The band also addressed some of the country's socio-political issues with humor and rhythm through songs such as I Don't Know Why and Kottamalli. The demise of late Sunil Perera will always leave a void that cannot be filled by another. Taking to social media, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa expressed his condolences and sorrow over the loss of the great musician. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa too stated that despite his political stance, his contribution to the music industry as a musician and a pioneer of the industry will never be lost from the hearts of the people. Other musicians and his peers also expressed sorrow over the loss of a dear friend and a colleague.
A dear friend of mine and someone whom I admired and loved first as a person, a musical colleague, and also me being an ardent fan. With his own brand of music, his lyrics were bold and tongue-in-cheek, bringing laughter to all, and his music will live in our hearts and minds for generations to come. Sunil was bigger than life itself. He believed in living a full life fearlessly.
දශක ගානක සංගීත ශාස්ත්‍රයේ නිමාවක්. ලොකු තිතක් සහ ලොකු void එකක් තියලා තමයි එයාද අපි සියලුම දෙනාව අතහැරලා දාලා දිව්‍යන් වහන්සේ ළඟට ගිහින් තියෙන්නේ.
සුනිල්ගේ හැම නිර්මාණයකම යම් පණිවිඩයක් තිබුණා සමාජයට දෙන හොඳ පණිවිඩයක්.
සුනිල් අයියාගේ අපි දැකපු විශේෂම ගුණය තමයි ඔහුගේ පරම්පරාවට පසු ආපු හැම පරම්පරාවටම ආදරය කරා. ඔහු ඒ හැම පරම්පරාවටම ආශිර්වාද කරා. සහ යම් කිසි කෙනෙක් අලුත් දේවල් කරා නම් ඒ අලුත් දේවල් වලට පුදුම විදිහට ශක්තිය ධෛර්යය දුන්නා. ඒවට ආශිර්වාද කරා.
Moving on with other stories, for the first time since the vaccination drive commenced in the island, the inoculation of Sri Lanka's 20 to 30-year-old population commenced today in the Western Province and in the Galle district. Health authorities stressed that only Colombo residents in the target age group and those in temporary lodgings within the specified districts can be inoculated through the program.
As announced yesterday by the head of the National Operations Centres for the Prevention of COVID-19, Army Commander General Shavendra Silva, the country's vaccine drive was expanded for persons between the age of 20 to 30 in the Western Province today. In addition to the Colombo, Kalutara and Gampha districts, the drive was worked off in Galle too today. Only the people residing or having lodgings in those districts can obtain the vaccine. Health authorities say that the Sinopharm vaccine will be used in the rollout for those aged between 20 and 30 in the Western Province.
Now the vaccination program has been extended to the younger age group above 20, and at the moment we have nearly completed the vaccination of above 60 and above 30 population in many parts of the country, and in districts where the vaccination percentage has gone above 80% like Hambantota, Galle and Western Province, we have already started the vaccination of younger age group.
It is not only the health sector operated vaccination centres which will immunise this new age group. Centres operated by the army, such as the one in the Viharamadevi Park, the Verahara and Panagoda Army Hospitals, and the centre in the Diyata Uyana, Battaramulla too, will immunise those between 20 and 30. The turnout of this age group at vaccination centres today was positive in all the districts the drive was worked off.
කොළඹ නගරය තුල නිවාසික ජනතාවගෙන් 97,388 දෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා. අවුරුදු 20ක් ඒ වගේම අවුරුදු 34 වයස් කාණ්ඩේ. මේ සියලු දෙනාවම එන්නත් කිරීම සඳහා අද දින සිට විශේෂ වැඩසටහනක් ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙනවා. කොළඹ නගරයේ රැකියා කරන මෙම වයස් කාණ්ඩේ සිටින අයවලුන් සඳහා විශේෂයෙන්ම කොළඹ නගරයේ බෝඩින් වෙලා ඉන්න ඒ වගේම කොළඹ නගරයට සේවාවන් සපයන ඒ අයටත් මේ එන්නත ලබා දීම සිදු කරනු ලබනවා.
Simultaneously, health authorities are still inoculating people above the age of 30. As the target vaccination of over 30s looked to be nearing completion, the government gave extra focus to vaccinating people above the age of 60. The military even provided mobile vaccination services for their benefit. But still, the Ministry of Health says that not all above the age of 60 are immunized.
100% ලබා දීලා ඉවර කරන්න වෙන්නේ ගෙයින් ගෙට ගිහිල්ලා ලොකු වෙහෙසකින් දරලා මිසක් අපිට එහෙම 100% වෙන්නම් කරන්න බෑ. ඒකට හේතුව තමයි ලංකාවේ බෙහෙත් ගන්න අකමැති කට්ටියක් ඉන්නත් පුළුවන්. ඒ අයට අපිට බලහත්කාරයෙන් බෙහෙත් ගන්න බෙතියක් නැහැ. යම් යම් මිත්‍යා මත නිසා මේ ගැන මැලිබෙන කණ්ඩායමක් ඉන්නවා. ඒ අයව දැනුවත් කරලා ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ තියෙන ගැටලු निराකරණය කරලා අපි ඒ අයට බෙහෙත් ලබා දීමට කටයුතු කරනවා. ඒ වගේම තමයි ශාරීරිකව හේතුන් මත එවදට තියෙන විශේෂ අනිකුත් හේතුන් මත සමහර වෙලාවට නිවසින් බැහැරව ගොස් මේ එන්නත ලබා ගැනීමට අපහසු අයට වෙනම එන්නත ලබා දීමට කටයුතු කරනවා. ඉතින් මේ වන විට අති බහුතරයකට මේක ලබා දීලා තියෙනවා. නමුත් සංඛ්‍යාත්මක වශයෙන් තවත් විශාල සංඛ්‍යාවක් මේ එන්නත ලබාගෙන නැති අය ඉන්නවා. මේක කී දෙනෙක්ද කියලා අපිට හරියට කියන්න පුළුවන් නම් අපි ඒ අයටත් හුඟක් වෙලාවට කතා කරලා මේ එන්නත ලබා දෙනවා. නමුත් එහෙමම අපිට කියන්න අමාරු තත්ත්වයක් තියෙන්නේ. නමුත් ඉදිරියේදී මේක කරගෙන යන වේගයට මම හිතනවා අපේ අති බහුතරයකට එන්නත ලබා ගැනීම දීම ගැටලුවක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ.
As of last evening, 9,129,246 persons had been fully vaccinated. A further 3,550,355 persons meanwhile awaiting the second dose of the vaccine. In the meantime, Sri Lanka received another consignment of Pfizer vaccine doses today. 92,430 Pfizer doses touched down at the Bandaranaike International Airport this morning as part of an SPC purchase order. Aided by the countrywide lockdown which came into effect on the 20th of last month, the daily COVID caseload has seen a marked decline in recent days. What was in the region of 4,500, the daily caseload has now come down to under 3,500. This development has led to some pluses for the health sector.
අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වුණ මට්ටමටම රෝගීන්ගේ අඩුවීමත් එක්ක ඔක්සිජන් මත රඳා පවතින හේතු වන රෝගීන් සංඛ්‍යාවත් සාපේක්ෂව අඩුවීමක් දකින්න පුළුවන්. මේ ආකාරයට ඔක්සිජන් ලබා ගන්න අවශ්‍ය කරන රෝගීන් සංඛ්‍යාව යම් ආකාරයකට අඩුවීම අපිටත් සැනසෙල්ලක්. ඒ වගේම අපිට අපේ රටේ ස්වයං පෝෂිත ලෙස පුළුවන් තරම් පිට රටින් ගෙන්නන්න නැතුව ලංකාවේ තියෙන ඔක්සිජන් නිෂ්පාදනයෙන් මේක රඳා පවත්වාගෙන යන්න පුළුවන් නම් මම හිතනවා අපිට ලැබෙන ලොකු අස්වැසිල්ලක්.
Now, the emergency regulations implemented for the supply of essential food items has been passed in Parliament with a majority of 81 votes, with a total of 132 parliamentarians voting in favour and 51 against. Meanwhile, during the debate before the vote, members of the opposition accused the government of using the shortage of essential food supplies to bring in draconian measures to crack down on public freedom. In response, Minister of Justice Ali Sabri accused the opposition of misconstruing the regulations to suit political agendas and of making unreasonable demands on the government for immediate solutions to decades-old issues.
මේ හදිසි නීතිය ඇයි කියන ප්‍රශ්නමයි අහන්නේ. ඇයි සාමාන්‍ය නීතිය අනුව යන්න බැරි? සාමාන්‍ය නීතිය අනුව ගියොතින් උසාවි ගානේ යන්න ඕන. නඩු තීන්දුව හරහා යන්න ඕන. අපි හොඳටම දන්නවා ගාස්තු ගන්න නීතිඥයෝ අල්ලලා යනවා අභියාචනාධිකරණයට සුප්‍රීම උසාවියට කියලා. මේවා අතරමඟ ඇනහිටවනවා. ඉතින් අපි ආණ්ඩුවක් ඇටියට නඩු කිය ඉන්න පුළුවන්. අන්තිමට මිනිස්සුන්ට සීනි කන්න වෙන්නේ 200 ගණන් වල. හාල් කන්න වෙන්නේ 100 ගණන් වල. ඉතින් එහෙම තත්ත්වයක් තුල හදිසි නීතිය පූර්ණ බලති හදිසි නීතියක් ලෙස ගේන්නේ. මේ අධ්‍යයන ග්‍රේව් ක්‍රයිසිස් එකක් නෙමෙයිද? මේ තරම් වැඩි ගණන් වලට බඩු මිල ඉහළ යද්දී මේ තරම් බඩු තොග හංගලා තියෙද්දී මේ තරම් ජාවාරම්කාරයෝ ඒවයින් කෝටි ප්‍රකෝටි ගණන් මුදල් උපයද්දී මේ තරම් මෝල් කාරයෝ එක කන්නයකින් බිලියන 50ක් තරම් ලාභයක් උපද්දවද්දී රටේ ජනතාව මේකට මුහුණ දෙන්න බැරි අහේනියකටපත් වී තිබීම ග්‍රේව් ක්‍රයිසිස් එකක් නෙවෙයි.
මේ සීනි අල්ලගෙන තියන්නේ කොහෙන්ද? හදිසි නීතියෙන්ද? පාරිභෝගික අධිකාරී පනත අනුව මාධ්‍ය පාලනය කරන්න සමාජ මාධ්‍ය ක්‍රියාකාරීන්ව දඬු කඳේ ගහන්න ඒ වගේම උද්ඝෝෂණ වැඩවර්ජන බැරක්කයකට සීමා කරලා ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදය දඩයම් කිරීම සඳහා තමයි මේ හදිසි නීතිය ගෙන්නේ.
මම සාමාන්‍යයෙන් මේ හදිසි නීති පනවනට විරුද්ධයි. නමුත් මේ අවස්ථාවේදී මම කියනවා මේ හදිසි නීතිය අවශ්‍ය වෙනවාමයි මේ මතුවලා තියෙන තත්ත්වයේ හේතු කොටගෙන අපි සහාය දෙන ගමන් අපි ඉතාමත්ම ඕනගමින් මේ ජනාධිපතිතුමාගෙන් ඉල්ලීමක් කරනවා මේක වැරදිව පාවිච්චි කිරීමට කාටවත් ඉඩ දෙන්න එපායි කියලා.
The attempt to bring the Public Security Ordinance to declare an emergency is indeed an attempt to cover up the misdeeds of the government. Nothing but that. If there is hoarding, hoarding can be controlled through the Consumer Affairs Authority bill. It is nothing but an attempt to bring more and more repression, authoritarian governance, and not to look at the consumer's benefit. This is nothing but a very surreptitious attempt to impose a dictatorial and draconian method of controlling public dissent in the country.
මේක කියන ආකාරයට මේක උපයෝගී කරගෙන මේ රටේ ජනතාවගේ අයිතිවාසික යටපත් කරන්න උත්සාහ කරනවා. එහෙම දෙයක් මේක තියෙනවද? මම මුලින්ම ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා විපක්ෂයේ ගරු මන්ත්‍රීවරුන් මේක හරියට කියවන්න. මොකක්ද අතිකරු ජනාධිපතිතුමා කරලා තියෙන්නේ? අත්‍යවශ්‍ය ආහාර සැපයීම සඳහා වන හදිසි නීති රෙගුලාසි ශ්‍රී ලංකාව මුළුල්ලේ ප්‍රකාශකයට පත් කරනවා. මේක එකම දෙයකට විතරයි සීමා වෙන්නේ. අත්‍යවශ්‍ය ආහාර බෙදා දෙන එක. ඒක කරන්න එපා කියලාද කියන්නේ? අපිට කියනවා ඩොලරේ පාලනය කරන්නලු. මිනිස්සුන්ට පඩි වැඩි කරලා දෙන්නලු. අවුරුදු 28කට පාලනය කරගන්න බැරි වෙච්ච ගුරු ප්‍රශ්නේ වහාම විසඳන්නලු. සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම එන්නතුත් කරන්නලු. එන්නත් වේලපයිනුත් කරන්නලු. 5000ක් දීපු එක වෙනුවට 20000ක් දෙන්නලු. රුපියලේ අවපාතනය වෙන එකත් නවත්තන්නලු. කොහොමද මේව කරන්නේ? අපි සියලු දෙනාම දන්නවා රජයකට ආදායම් ලැබෙන ක්‍රමවේදයක් තියෙනවා. ජාත්‍යන්තර වශයෙන් අපිට ආදායම් ලැබෙන ෆොරෙක්ස් අපිට ලැබෙන ක්‍රම තුනක් තියෙනවා. එකක් තමයි පිටරටින් ටුවරිස්ට්ලා එන එක. බිලියන 5ක් අපිට හම්බුණා 2018 දී. බිඳුවට බැලලා තියෙනවා. ෆොරින් රෙමිටන්ස් එක මැද පෙරදිගෙන් තමයි මේ මුදල් එන්නට ඕන. ඒකේ යම් පීඩනයක් තියෙනවා. ඒ ප්‍රමාණය යම් කිසි අඩුවක් වෙලා තියෙනවා. ටුවරිසම් එක අපිට අරින්න එපා කියලා ඔබම කියනවා. ඉතින් මේක ප්‍රායෝගික தත්ත්වය පිළිගන්නට ඕන. දේශීය වශයෙන් අපිට ආදායම් හම්බ වෙන ක්‍රම කීපයක් තියෙනවා. මොකද්ද? ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් දේශීය වශයෙන් අපිට ආදායම් හම්බ වෙන ක්‍රම තුනක් තියෙනවා. එකක් තමයි බදු. ඒ බදු මුදල් අඩු වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඊළඟට ආදායම් බදු. ඉතින් ඒ ලොක්ඩවුන් කරනකොට ඒකත් අඩු වෙනවා. ඒකත් එක්ක අපිට ලැබෙන ඊළඟ කස්ටම් එක පිටරටෙන් භාණ්ඩ ගෙන්නන එක නවත්තනකොට ඒකත් අඩු වෙනවා. ඉතින් මේ හින්දා ඕන ඔබතුමන්ලගේ රජය හිටියත් කවුරු හිටියත් රජයේ විශාල පීඩනයකට ලක් වෙලා ඉන්නවා.
Big 3.
Now, Sri Lanka's permanent representative to the United Nations in New York, Mohan Piris, says that Sri Lanka is not at crossroads with the United Nations and says that the government has shown clear keenness to forge ahead with the necessary domestic mechanisms in keeping with its human rights and reconciliation obligations to the international community. Meanwhile, legal expert Professor Pratibha Mahanameheva says that Sri Lanka needs to have a concerted program to address some of the more urgent post-conflict issues in the country, which is the only way the hearts of the West can be won over.
Speaking at a webinar organised by the Ambassadors Forum, the London Initiative and the Ontario Centre for Policy Research, Sri Lanka's permanent representative to the United Nations in New York, Mohan Piris, outlined the Sri Lankan government's brief to its fellow members in the run-up to two crucial diplomatic events this month. This month, Sri Lanka will be in the spotlight once again at the United Nations Human Rights Council and will also participate in the United Nations General Assembly as well.
We know that His Excellency the President has given directives to expedite the work of the domestic mechanisms of the commissions of inquiry, which is presently, we know that Justice Nawaz, a judge of the Supreme Court, and 3 other commissioners are sitting as we speak, going into these matters through new lenses. On the question of accountability, we know that the Commission of Inquiry, which was established in January of this year, has been conducting hearings since April. And an interim report, as I said, of the COI was presented to His Excellency just a few weeks ago. It is envisaged that the final report of the Commission will deal with the important issues of accountability after studying the previous reports in this regard.
Further, while adding that Sri Lanka and the United Nations are not at crossroads on the issues at hand, Piris added that current action to review the Prevention of Terrorism Act and seek the release of long-term suspects is ample proof of the government's keenness to set things right.
We are not at cross purposes with Geneva. Having said that, you might ask me, okay, what have you done? Or what is the government seen to be doing in this regard? Now, you will see that the government has commenced the process of revisiting, for example, the provisions of the Prevention of Terrorism Act. On the 21st of June, a cabinet subcommittee was appointed in order to review the PTA and to submit a report to the cabinet within 3 months. Then we also know that His Excellency the President very recently granted a pardon to 16 LTTE cadres convicted and serving a sentence under the PTA. Further, a process has also been set in motion to grant the release to detainees who have been in judicial custody for a long time. Then we have, on the 24th of August, just a few weeks ago, His Excellency has appointed a retired Chief Justice, Honorable Asoka De Silva, a former Chief Justice, as the chairman of an advisory board in terms of Section 13 of the PTA, and 2 other members to an advisory board to visit those cases of detainees who are in custody for an unusually long time with a view to ensuring their release. Then we have the all-important, the Office of Missing Persons, is in the process of verifying the figures of these missing persons with the cooperation of the relevant government agencies. Then we have, as I said, the Office of the Reparations, and it's continuing to pay compensation. The reparations policy was approved last week by the Cabinet. Then we have the Office for National Unity and Reconciliation. Now, ONUR continues to execute its mandate with a view to building national unity and reconciliation under 8 thematic areas.
Meanwhile, Dean of the Faculty of Law at the University of Technology in Jamaica, Professor Pratibha Mahanamaheva, says that Sri Lanka needs to implement a concerted national inquiry focusing on a wide range of issues in order to win the hearts of the Western nations.
So my alternative solution is one, national inquiry, select one area, treatment of detainees, illegal armed groups. Still illegal armed groups are there in Northern Province, our group and others. Then conspiration of children, child rights you can select as disabled person right, internally disabled persons, Muslim community in the North and East area, what type of issues they are facing, and freedom of expression and the right to information, freedom of religion and association and movement, follow-up action of the past commission inquiries. So these are some of the areas where the National Human Rights Commission, I am specifically discussing the area where the National Human Rights Commission, they can discuss with having a work with basically public officers as well as our civil society community and come for one purpose. Then we can win the heart of the athlete from this. So rather than rejecting most of the time reports, we must work out with the system where we can get the votes, those who are not voting.
Now then, health experts say that hospitalizations owing to burns and violence have increased during the pandemic. They say that most of the burns have been caused by steam, as more and more people attempt to steam as a remedy for COVID-19.
Health experts today revealed a peculiar development in the backdrop of COVID-19. They say that patients admitted to hospitals with burns of all sorts have increased. But chief among them is injuries inflicted by steam.
අපි මෙහි දත්ත නිරීක්ෂණය කළා බලනකොට අපි දැක්ක දෙයක් තමයි සියලු වයස්කාණ්ඩ මේකට ඇතුළත් වෙලා තියෙනවා. අපි මේ ඇතුළත් වුණ රෝගීන්ගේ කොහොමද මේක උනේ කියලා අහලා බලනකොට වැඩි රෝගී ප්‍රමාණයකට හේතු වෙලා තියෙන්නේ මේ හුමාලය අල්ලන්න ගිහිල්ලා. දැන් අපි දන්නවා ශ්වසන පද්ධතියේ තියෙන අවහිරතාවයන් වලදී මේක පුරුද්දක් විදිහට ඉස්සරින් ඉඳන් කරන දෙයක් තමයි හුමාලය ආශ්වාස කරන. මේකෙන් අපි කියන්නේ සිම්පටොමැටික් රිලීෆ් එකක් විතරයි එන්නේ. නමුත් මේ කොවිඩ් හැම අපි දකිනවා මේ ප්‍රතිකාරයක් හැටියට කොවිඩ් එකෙන් වැළකී ඉන්න කියලා මේ හුමාලය අල්ලනවා. මම හිතන්නේ මේක කවුරුත් අනුමත කරන දෙයක් කියලා. මේකෙන් රෝගය සෑදීම හරි ඒකේ වැළකී සිටීමට මම හිතන්නේ දත්ත තියනවා කියනවා. මේකෙදි බොහොම භයානකාර විදියට තමයි පිලිස්සුම් වෙන්නේ. මොකද දුම් අල්ලන වාජනේ මේ කකුල් දෙක මැද තියාගන්නේ. දැන් සාමාන්‍ය අතක් වගේ කොහරි පිච්චුනොත් අපිට ඩ්‍රෙසින් එකක් දාලා අපිට ගොඩක් වෙලාවට ගෙදර යවන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වුණාට ඉනෙන් පල්ලහ වෙන ඒ දරුණු පිලිස්සුම් වලදී ඒ අවයව පිලිස්සුනාම ඒක බොහොම අමාරු තත්ත්වයක්. ඒක ප්‍රතිකාර කරන්න පිරිසිදුව තියාගන්න. මොකද අපි දන්නවා රෝගියාට මුත්‍රා කරන්න ඕන, මල පහ කරන්න ඕන. එතකොට ඒ ආශ්‍රිතව පිලිස්සුමුත් වෙලා තියෙනවා නම් ඒ දරුවා අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම විස බීජ වලින් සංකූලතා ඇති වෙන්න තියෙන ප්‍රවණතාවය බොහොම වැඩි.
Dr. Vijay Mana also noted that there has been a marked increase in patients coming to hospitals with injuries sustained during incidents of violence.
Violence නම් වැඩි වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒක මට domestic violence ද කියන එක අපිට කියන්න අමාරුයි. නමුත් violence වැඩි වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ විශේෂයෙන්ම මේ මුවත් මේ ආයුධ වලින් වෙන කැපීම් කෙටි. සමහර රෝගීන්ගේ එක කැපුමක් විතරක් නෙමෙයි කැපුම් 9ක් විතර දකින්න. කැපුම් 8ක් විතර.
Now, MP Rishad Badiuddin's spouse and father-in-law were further reminded today when the case pertaining to the death of the 16-year-old girl Ishalini was taken up. The MP's brother-in-law, however, was granted conditional bail. The MP himself, who was named as the 5th suspect in the case, was produced before court today for the first time as well. The case pertaining to the death of 16-year-old Ishalini, who was employed as a maid at MP Rishad Badiuddin's residence, was taken up today before Colombo Additional Magistrate Rajindra Jayasuriya. MP Badiuddin, who was named as the 5th suspect in the case, was also produced before court today. Making submissions before the court, Deputy Solicitor General Dilip Piris said that it is highly suspicious as to how the MP can make phone calls from within the prison when signal jamming technology is used within the prison premises. He said that the State Intelligence Service is conducting investigations on the mobile phone which the MP had thrown out of a window after prison guards saw him making a phone call. Meanwhile, the bail applications filed by MP Badiuddin's spouse and father-in-law, who are also suspects in the case, were rejected by the court. They were denied bail as the additional magistrate deemed that there is evidence of the duo attempting to suppress evidence, and the duo was further remanded. But MP Badiuddin's brother-in-law, who was also in remand custody, was granted bail as further evidence against him has not been uncovered during investigations. The additional magistrate ordered his release upon 2 surety bails of 500,000 rupees each. The suspect, however, was banned from leaving the country and was ordered to report to the Madavachi police station on the last Sunday of every month. In the meantime, the Deputy Solicitor General also submitted a statement given by a driver employed at the Badiuddin household, identified as Mohammed Rizvi, to the court. He told the court that the said driver's statement reveals that a chief inspector of police, who was present at the Badiuddin residence when Nishalini's parents came there, had influenced the girl's parents not to take the matter any further. He also noted that an attorney-at-law had also been there at the suspect's residence at the time. The Deputy Solicitor General went on to say that the said lawyer represents MP Badiuddin and therefore refrained from naming him before the court. Further, he questioned as to why legal experts and police officers arrived at the suspect's residence and behaved in such a manner if the girl's burns were natural. During the proceedings, Deputy Solicitor General Dilip Piris told the court that an individual seated in the courtroom had recorded his submissions while intimating to be a journalist during the previous hearing. When an individual seated in the courtroom was summoned by the additional magistrate, he identified himself as a secretary of MP Rishad Badiuddin. He was then warned not to engage in such activities inside the courtroom. Sri Lanka's main stock index fell 0.95% today, while the S&P SL 20 index of more liquid stocks fell 39.53 points to close at 3,455.23. Overall market turnover today was 7.7 billion rupees, well over this year's average daily turnover of 3.9 billion rupees. Now here's Dimata Mathi with a brief report on today's market performance.
With the significant bull run that we saw over the last couple of weeks, today, as expected, there was a bit of profit taking in the market. So market seems to be going through a correction at the moment. We are seeing a bit of selling pressure coming in, specifically on the retail favorite counters across the board. We are seeing a lot of selling pressure, and with it, the index dipped by around 88 points. So at the start of the day itself, we saw the decline in the overall market. So first of all, during the first hour of trading, it was sort of a V-shaped recovery that we saw after the dip, and then afterwards again we saw selling pressure coming back into the market after the recovery, and then there was a continuous downward trend in the index. So overall, S&P SL 20 index also declined by around 39 points.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.